Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Eylon Levy, an Israeli government spokesman. Thank you very much for joining us. First, a brief update, and then I will take your questions. Since declaring war on Israel with the October 7th massacre, Hamas has fired over 10,000 rockets at Israel. Over 1,200 Israelis were killed in the massacre, and over 7,667 Israelis have been injured since the war began. These numbers are, of course, expected to change. The IDF has notified the families of 368 soldiers that their loved ones fell in battle, as well as 59 members of the police forces. The hostage count in Gaza is now approximately 240, including nationals of 26 different countries. And I would just ask anyone who is not on mute at the moment to please put themselves on mute, because I'm hearing it in my earpiece and it is distracting. Thank you. It is day 40 that our 240 hostages are in Hamas captivity, and as always, I want to draw attention to two of the hostages in Gaza. Two hostages who are supposed to be celebrating their birthdays today, and they're in captivity. This is Amit Estelle Buskila. Her friends had planned a surprise birthday party for her today, on her 28th birthday. But she was abducted by Hamas on October 7th from the Nova Music Festival, so she won't be celebrating with them today. This is Tamir Nimrodi. He turned 19 today, but he won't be celebrating his birthday with his parents and two sisters. Instead, he remains in brutal Hamas captivity in the dungeons of Gaza. We want to see both Amit and Tamir back in the loving embrace of their families soon. We're doing everything we can to bring them home. As we've emphasized, bringing home our hostages is one of Israel's key goals in our war against Hamas. We repeat our demand for the international community to apply all pressure on Hamas and its supporters to release all the hostages immediately and unconditionally. Moving on to today's operational update. Last night, the IDF began a precise and targeted operation against Hamas in the Shifa Hospital, which sits above Hamas's underground headquarters. I want to explain how we got here. For years, the Shifa Hospital has been used as a major military asset by Hamas in order to direct attacks against the Israeli people. For weeks, Israel has been alerting the world about the unlawful exploitation of Shifa. We have spent a month urging and facilitating evacuations, declassifying sensitive intelligence. We have repeatedly warned Hamas to desist. Those warnings were ignored. We have provided sufficient time to act. 48 hours ago on Monday evening, the IDF conveyed a message to the Hamas Health Ministry, demanding that all military activities in the Shifa Hospital cease immediately. We demanded that if Hamas not stop within 12 hours, we would be well within our rights under international law to counter those activities. The deadline elapsed, and with it, Shifa's protected status. Hamas must surrender now. Hospitals must be protected. They must never be hijacked by terrorists or any armed factions. We therefore repeat our call for Hamas terrorists hiding in the Shifa Hospital to surrender immediately, come out with a white flag, and stop exploiting the hospital. International law must be upheld. International law does not give blanket immunity to terrorists just because they are hiding in the basement of a hospital. When hospitals are used as bases for military activity, they lose their protected status after warning has been given and has been ignored. Additional Protocol 1 of the Geneva Conventions, Article 13.1, reflecting customary international law, says clearly, and I quote, "The protection to which civilian medical units are entitled shall not cease unless they are used to commit, outside their humanitarian function, acts harmful to the enemy. Protection, however, may cease only after a warning has been given, setting, wherever appropriate, a reasonable time limit, and after such warning has remained unheeded." Those conditions regarding the Shifa Hospital have long since been met. That is what international law says. We take it very seriously, much more seriously than the people who pretend that it gives Hamas immunity because they don't want Israel to defend itself from the genocidal masterminds of October 7th. We know what international law says, we know our obligations, and we know our rights. IDF soldiers are delivering humanitarian aid to the patients in the hospital above the Shifa terror complex. Over the weekend, Hamas stopped doctors from receiving life-saving Israeli aid. Now that we're in the hospital, it can't stop us now. Israeli tanks delivered incubators, baby food, and medical supplies, despite Hamas's best efforts to manufacture a humanitarian emergency. The IDF has medical teams and Arabic-speaking soldiers on the ground to ensure that those supplies reach the people in need. I want to say a word about the global aspect as well. For too long, international agencies and officials have been tacitly complicit with Hamas's long-standing abuse of hospitals as human shields. We are demanding full accountability from them. What did you know? Why did you not say anything? Why do you continue to do propaganda for Hamas instead of doing your jobs? The director of the World Health Organization, Mr. Ghebreyesus, is tweeting that the IDF's incursion is deeply disturbing. No, what is disturbing is Hamas putting its headquarters in the basement and the fact that you are covering for it. The UN Undersecretary for Humanitarian Affairs, Martin Griffiths, is appalled by reports of the military raids. No, what is appalling is that Hamas hijacked protected institutions and UN agencies did nothing. To the alphabet soup of international agencies complicit with Hamas's war crimes, we say, your negligence has put lives at risk and has cost innocent lives. Now that we have caught you in the act, can you please find the strength to condemn Hamas? Forget us. You have failed the Palestinian people. You have failed the world. You have all failed at your jobs. As for the progression of our campaign to destroy Hamas in response to the October 7th massacre, I'll repeat the Prime Minister's words from earlier to soldiers at Zikim. There is nowhere in Gaza that we will not reach. There will be no hiding place, no shelter, no refuge for Hamas murderers. We will reach and eliminate Hamas, and we will bring back our hostages. Those are our two sacred missions. End quote. I'll now take your questions. As always, please put your hands up or type the questions in the chat, and we'll begin with a question that was submitted in advance, and we would advise you all to submit those questions in advance. From David Isaac from JNS, Arabic reports say today that the first fuel truck bearing 24,000 litres of fuel passed through the Rafah crossing into the Gaza Strip. Can you verify that? Does this signal a change in policy? Israel had said earlier that it would allow food, water, and medicine, but not fuel into the Gaza Strip. Since the beginning of this war, beginning with the October 7th massacre, Israel has indeed been facilitating the provision of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, specifically food, water, medicine, and shelter. What I confirm is this. UN trucks transporting humanitarian aid from the Rafah border crossing into the southern Gaza Strip were scheduled indeed to be refueled today, Wednesday, at the crossing. This follows a request from the US administration and is being done in coordination with the relevant security authorities. We will, of course, continue to take all necessary action to ensure that Hamas not exploit the international community's goodwill in order to rearm and refuel its war machine against us. We're talking about humanitarian aid trucks that were refueled at the Rafah border crossing. Do we have any questions, please? Emmett Lyons, CBS, please. The IDF, Israel has no plans to reoccupy the Gaza Strip or govern the territory. That is not the goal of our campaign. The goal is to destroy Hamas, to remove it from power, to destroy its terror infrastructure and make sure that it no longer poses a threat to Israel. And we will continue after this to continue throughout the rest of the Gaza Strip to destroy the Hamas infrastructure responsible for the October 7th massacre. A question from Steve Hendricks, please. Sure. As for the first question about discoveries inside the Shifa Hospital, I haven't seen that the IDF has put out anything specific today since that began and we began delivering humanitarian aid. We hope, of course, and I know the IDF hopes that once it is safe and secure to do so, we will be able to bring in foreign news crews into the Shifa Hospital to see what was going on there, in continuation of what we've been doing in the last few days, when news crews have been given access to the basement of the Rantisi Hospital, of course, where we found a motorbike that was suspected to be used in the October 7th massacre, in a space that we suspect was being used to hold our hostages. Once conditions are safe to do so, we very much hope that it will be possible not only to send you materials that we're collecting, but also to deliver first-hand access inside. But of course, this is all very conditional and dependent on operational conditions. As for the questions regarding the United States, if you have a specific question, send it to us and I'll see if I can get you a specific answer. But the United States has been very clear from day one of this operation that this war must end with the defeat total defeat and destruction of Hamas. We saw, of course, President Biden's remarks that hospitals must be protected. We agree with that. Hospitals must never be used in violation of the additional protocol of the Geneva Conventions as military facilities. And I think that both National Security Council spokesman John Kirby and the spokesman for the State Department just 2 days ago explained very clearly what the United States means by that. It means that Hamas must stop using that as a base for attacks, and anyone demanding that Israel halt activities also demand that Hamas come out and surrender and stop using that as a base for military activities. Any other questions, please? Emmett, you have a follow-up question, please? Mm-hmm. Sure. That is a specific operational question for the IDF. I would refer your question to the IDF spokesperson that is, of course, coordinating all the provision of humanitarian aid that we've been supplying into the hospital now that we've been able to gain access and deliver the sort of aid that Hamas has been refusing and stopping the hospital from accepting for the last few days. I'd refer that question to the IDF. Mm-hmm.
Also, is there any comment on a report that the UN was delaying a safety corridor in the Al-Marawasi region?
A question from Coach Winehouse about the south of the Gaza Strip. At the moment, we are focusing our campaign on Gaza City. That is where Hamas has embedded the bulk of its terrorist infrastructure, the so-called Gaza Metro, that sprawling spiderweb of tunnels underneath the Gaza Strip. That is what we are focusing at the moment. As for the question regarding the United Nations and the Al-Mawasi area, I'm afraid I'm not familiar with the specific report that you're alluding to, but if you'd like to send us a message with a question, I'll see if I can get you an answer. Okay. And I think that is all we have time for today. Thank you very much for joining us. We will update you in the WhatsApp group about the briefing tomorrow. As always, everyone, please stay safe and have a good evening. Thank you very much.